workload optimization, right? We see that those work. Some of those workloads are going to run on premise. Some of them are going to run in the cloud. Some of them are going to need to talk to each other, right? That skill set is not out there. All of that infrastructure does not exist today. So we're really sort of at the precipice or inflection point of an aspect of a new industry, right? That's what that $500 billion announcement was made for, and we really think that that's just the tip of the iceberg of what's going to happen over the next 10 years.
What do we do next in terms of working with other peers? And by that, I mean, I'm showing up as an investor for the last 30 years and consulting for as many years and coaching businesses for the last 15 years, mostly technology firms, because that's my background, and engineering is my background too. So I have a diverse interest. And so I started the space that we call Peers on Demand as a way to connect with other leaders, different vertical markets, because I just enjoy it. And this CEOs is more of a catchphrase, but a lot of people are CEOs. But as you can see or hear, there's a lot of different interests. And what if we connect those people in some way that they can do business, refer business, do collaborative ventures that we call CoVentures? Having a space here for CEOs on an ongoing basis, on a monthly basis, I thought, well, what if we bring together those CEOs and collaborate together? So last year was a big area for cybersecurity, still is a big area. We created a cyber academy where people and businesses can do some online training, as well as focusing on some vertical markets with security.world, especially the medical area, and trying to cover that because they're much more vulnerable. And working with other peers that are in different areas. Consulting Ace addresses government grants, commercial incentives, if you qualify, and in some cases could be millions of dollars that can be given to medical institutions, for instance. Entrepreneurs University does small, medium, and large size companies for education and training. VenOps, we're working with them. They're created an AI that wants to elevate their business in the medical area. They've got access to 1,000 hospitals as clients in orthopedics. We're working with also Echo.ai, Savvy.ai. And that's going to be a big area. Every company is going to step in thinking and doing actually AI in some fashion. And their focus with healthcare for the employee benefits and other areas. Continuum Foundation, they're focused on the digital world, which is a big presence. Blockchain is huge, NFTs, but even cryptocurrency is even bigger, or at least more predominant. We're working in Southeast Asia, Aruba.world, also from a philanthropic standpoint with nonprofits, Blackbird Foundation. They stepped in through cybersecurity and then went into healthcare areas, providing kiosks. And they've grown quite a bit of revenue from the African countries that are able to afford those areas and other philanthropic areas. My invitation is that you might consider joining our CoVentures mastermind that we have on a weekly basis, other leaders that participate and contribute, so we do it more frequently. So that's my invitation. Join our community, peersondemand.com. Certainly join any of our events. Most of them are free, and consider being part of our CoVentures world. So working with high-performance athletes. But now you're transitioning to, as I heard you say, high school, and you're in an area of hiring and looking for funding as well. So Troy, maybe you could share a little bit better about what's the big idea for your business this year, 2025, the opportunity, the challenge. But first, the big idea, Troy.
So in our world, we specialize in predicting performance, and we look at this from the standpoint of an individual or an athlete compared to the demand of the task. And we've had quite a bit of success with the pros, but they are a long sales cycle, and they're traditionally late on paying, and they're difficult to deal with. And after COVID, we realized, hey, all the college players and high school players are still training. It makes sense to pivot and go with a much broader market where we can generate a lot more revenue. So this year, we're going into the high school space, college. We already have 31 universities asking for agreements. where we can build a player performance evaluation report on both the recruits, on who they sign, who they don't sign, and current roster. So we solve a lot of problems given the recruiting, given transfer portal, and NIL. So we are right now, the universities are lining up and we are in high demand. So I've really got to bolster the operations team. We've got to bring in some money to hire some more analysts to get them trained on our methodology. So what we're doing is game changing all the way across the board,
Well,
from the
you're
high school, college, and go ahead.
yeah, well, you're in the hiring mode, which means you need funding. Can you say more about the kind of people you're hiring and also what kind of funding are you looking for, Troy?
Yeah, so we're going out. We're looking for 2.5 million, and this is actually our first money's in. We have 15 million in committed annual recurring revenue starting this year with the number of high school and colleges that we have lined up already. So we are looking for some key analysts. We have there's a few universities that specialize in uh, marketing and analytics. And this goes into our methodology where we're working with the University of Utah as well as UTA and University of North Carolina. They all have very strong analytics departments. And so we're working with those three universities, specifically looking at people that we can bring in and or people in the space already. And then on the operations front, I've been interviewing a couple operations people with background experience in scaling companies. So that's really our focus. And then marketing, obviously, those guys are a dime a dozen. So we're looking at really good digital strategists and marketing because we just haven't had to market working with the pro teams. And now that we're pivoting, going into a different vertical with youth sports, we need to have a new presence out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, there are a lot of marketing companies out there. Getting the right one will really boost you forward. Let me open it up to see if anybody has a question, comment, thought, feedback for Troy. Anybody?
I have some feedback, Troy. This is Mark Jones from Sprout. I actually did some work in this actual area that you're going through. A small company you may have heard of called IMG, and so I'd be happy to connect with you and give you some greater insights and some thoughts. We actually even built some tombstones for these college athletes that. And we were working on some stuff with Amazon Web Services as it relates to AI and predictive analysis, performance analysis, okay? Where you're actually measuring it with a camera, right? You know what I'm talking about. You're in that. So, and by the way, I helped launch the Tampa Bay Rays in their inaugural season here in Tampa, but that's all besides the point. Here, I'll be happy to connect with you. Where's most of your, this kind of applies to anybody looking for capital. Where are most of your customers located, that your initial customers?
Well, on the high school front, California, Texas, and Florida, because those are the meccas, and then Georgia and Maryland. So, and right now we have over 200,000 high school kids committed to come through. So,
okay. So here's what I would suggest to you, if I just may, in your approach to raising capital. You certainly could use a federal registration, a 506C. You have to have all accredited investors. But if you look at using some of the state exemptions, they can be very, very lucrative for you in the way of reaching new investors, and they don't necessarily need to be accredited. And what Governor DeSantis just did here is you can raise up to $5 million from unaccredited investors, as so long as a big portion of that money stays here in Florida. I can walk you through that process and how we could do that. Okay. I'm not looking to get paid. I don't have a lot of time necessarily either to give you. I don't want to delusion you. And that's why I'm looking for guys like the great Rocky Romero here to step in and help, and other people to help carry this ball forward that I've built. But you're on to something. And you've said all the right things. When I go down the list and I check the boxes, is this a company I want to underwrite? I've checked a few boxes with you today. So we'll go on to the next
Yeah,
one.
go ahead, Rock.
One quick question for Troy.
Yeah.
Troy, are you focusing on primarily the physical attributes of the athlete and their performance, or do you get into the behavioral side as well?
Oh, absolutely. We're actually the only analytics company that looks at all 5 areas, which include physical, technical, tactical, neuromotor, and cognitive, or neuromotor and cognitive are mental and emotional. So we look at all 5 areas of the performance capability of an athlete.
Here. Todd, I wonder if you could share more about what's the big idea in perhaps your business this year, the opportunity that perhaps you can identify, and maybe the challenge. Todd, first start off with a big idea going forward. Todd, welcome.
Large opportunities in the aerospace, excuse me, and DoD sector, particularly with a lot of the defense contractors and the military who are very interested and use our product currently. But there's some additional functionality that if we were to invest in that, enhance our product, we could probably increase our install base tenfold within 12 to 18 months.
Wow, with that growth, you don't want to exit, you want to stay in and see it through. But let me open it up. There's some other people here in your industry that perhaps both from a funding standpoint and also technical standpoint that could assist you. Anybody have a comment, thought, idea, feedback for Todd? Anybody?
I was
There's
very
a big
interested in what Brad does. I'd be interested in talking with Brad and seeing if there's any kind of collaboration we could do, because we offer kind of a front end for a lot of other processes in manufacturing where access to 3D CAD data in any kind of format is very valuable and useful.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I also have a pretty heavy Aris Technology. One of my 2 companies has a very heavy, I would say we're 70% government aerospace. We just going down to Tampa, oddly enough, Mark, on Sunday for a military additive manufacturing show, which is down there in Tampa next week. So I'll be there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And we just put a system in at Hill Air Force Base out in Salt Lake City and one in Robbins down in Georgia to do automated 3D scanning. But we interface with CAD quite a bit. So yeah, I think Todd, we could probably talk offline. As far as again, not sure why I was on this meeting, but I'm excited to be here. Somebody told me once that you should get money or borrow money or get investment when you don't need it. I'm kind of at a situation where I don't know that we need it. However, it could, stoke the fire and we've had ideas and opportunities about right now. We just sell, systems. So there's a acquisition phase you have to go through. People have showed interest in renting or leasing. And so there's been ideas I've thought about before about, hey, should I build a few systems and, rent to own or lease them out? But that takes capital. I don't have real deep pockets. So that type of stuff might be interesting to talk with a group like this. Again, kind of a pleasant surprise. I wasn't sure what I was clicking into here, but glad to have a good opportunity to meet everybody. And Todd, yeah, we should connect offline and learn a little bit more about each other's business. I am based out of Chicago. I dropped a couple of our websites out there. I am just, as far as working, we're based out of Chicago, Illinois, or Chicago area, just so give you an idea where I'm at.
Thanks, Brad. Yeah, they say always look for money when you don't need the money, and that's when you'll get it. But I think, Troy, you had a question for Todd. Go ahead.
No, I didn't have a question. I just had a comment that I know a big venture capital company that only focuses on aerospace and aviation. So And they're tied in here in Salt Lake City because of ATK, L3, and Northrop Grumman here. So you have
Oh, right.
three of the big players here in Salt Lake, and you have a big venture capital company. They have three offices. One happens to be here in Utah, and they focus on aerospace. So that could be a good tie-in. I know those guys pretty well.
Oh, interesting. Well, thanks, Troy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, hey, one of the things that we did during the COVID was we launched Sprout Launchpad with a cooperative agreement with NASA. And we were doing technology spinouts for NASA. And it was an intercollegiate competition among universities. We gamified it. And so I've got some experience with working with NASA. And when these kids won these competitions to commercialize the NASA technology, right? Of course, everybody knew me. A lot of people knew me in the early stage financial markets. Then the money came in behind the deals. So I've got some connections in that area. I have my email up there. We're free to chat. You want to, run some ideas past me, but there's a lot of opportunity. And NASA is going to go through a paradigm shift with this current administration and Elon Musk being involved. It's going to get very, very interesting. So I think the timing's good for some of these projects.
Yeah, the timing's good, but it's the connections that make more the differentiator, and that would be you, Mark. You're involved in that. Yeah, certainly if you could say more. I'm also in Florida like you, but you're involved with from a political aspect, Governor DeSantis. You're talking also of offering some way to get capital. Can you say more about what you're talking about in your business this year, the opportunity, maybe the challenge to getting to that? But first, what is it exactly we're talking about, Mark?
So my passion kind of shifted away from building the next great thing to empowering these people to commercialize their ideas. And I just became a student of how do we legislatively make this work so that it's affordable and everybody gets the opportunity and it doesn't become a handout, but becomes a hand up, right? And so that's what I did for about 4 to 5 years. And through the process, I built some very, very sophisticated software that the SEC was going to use it as an NGO to keep these early stage companies compliant. And so I have all the software. I was off. If many of you people have heard of Start Engine, they're a big funding portal. They're a broker dealer. They charge a lot. They have Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank as a spokesperson. They offered me a substantial amount of money for my software. At the time, I wasn't ready to sell it. Perhaps looking back, I should have. But now I'm kind of to the point where I'm ready. I'm ready to go into the next transition and do the next thing. But yet, no, I still want to stay with my legacy and keep helping companies move forward. So I have the software. It's called Sprout. A company can come in. They can sign up to use it. It's very affordable. I have a very affordable solution. You can get a subscription if you're compliant, because I don't want good people to get in bad trouble. So that would mean you would have to have a federally registered 506C, which isn't that extremely difficult. I have somebody that can help you put that together for as little as $2,500 to $3,000, and that's an attorney, by the way. That's an attorney. So you're on your way, and now you're going to solicit accredited investors. Now, my software has got a deal room, it's got multimedia, it's got shareholder relations, it's got all of these very sophisticated things that have all been reviewed by the SEC, and it's been reviewed by FINRA, Financial, Regulatory Authority, as fully compliant. And on the crowdfunding side, if you want to do a state offering, I'm the only Florida approved crowdfunding state portal. Well, why is that important? Well, because you can't do a federal offering. You can't take an investor from Georgia or Alabama necessarily, but you can take investors from Florida. And why is that? That is, in my proposition, it's a much better deal both for the entrepreneur and the investor. One thing we learned during COVID was investors don't want to fly across the country for a $2,500 investment. They just want to be able to come by and see. I mean, that's the reality. 506C is a securities document where you can take accredited investors who have $1 million net worth. And you can do that federally. You can do that everywhere. Okay. And you can use my platform to do that everywhere. And I've had big companies use my platform to raise millions of dollars. Now, I'm going to bring you back. If you want to do a state offering, they don't have to be necessarily accredited investors. They don't have to have $1 million net worth. And the paperwork is very minimal that you put together with the state of Florida. And you can accept as little as $1,500 to $2,500. So, for example, Brad, if somebody comes in, but you know, I know you're in Chicago there, but if, for example, you would have to show the state of Florida that either you're going to use some of that money to open up an office here. They want to know if you're going to come in and take the Florida investors' money, that at least a certain portion of it is going to stay here within the state. They don't want you to come in, take the investors' monies and leave. With that, the investor can put in as little as $2,500 and they don't need to be accredited. So you don't have to worry about, well, does this guy have $1 million net worth? So if we're going to monitor it all, we're going to make sure when they come in that they are a Florida resident. We're going to make sure that you're in compliance. We're going to make sure that our software is so sophisticated that we don't let you get out of compliance. You're going to have to work really hard to get out of compliance. But I'm going to tell you something, folks. This is a big shattering moment, maybe for some of you. In the first 3 years of crowdfunding for equity, this is why compliance and having your house so in order, almost 40% of the offerings done, the companies were not properly incorporated or didn't have the proper number of shares authorized. What does that mean? That means that they perpetrated a fraud on the investor. It was either unattended, or it certainly, I don't believe it was intended, but you have to have your housekeeping in order. And what my software does is it makes sure before you hit the gas pedal that you're in compliance. And that's why the SEC and FINRA likes us.
We've got Rocco Petrelli, who has an engineering background, also automotive, and also is a fractional officer. I wonder if you could say more, Rocco, because you're talking about working with people and you're also talking about being able to be very direct, more the execution. There are a lot of strategists here that would love to be able to work with you to execute. But what's your idea? What's your business do this coming year? What's the big idea, the opportunity, the challenge that you're facing? But first, what's your big idea, Rocco Petrelli?
Well, you know, being an engineer, even though I'm a chemical engineer, I was always a nuts and bolts kind of guy. So obviously, technique wise, always would morph to the nuts and bolts side. But in terms of execution, particularly strategic execution, I found it to be much more tied to you know, the people and understanding the people and properly communicating with people and making sure they're involved, and also doing a lot of work on the talent optimization side of things. You know, making sure that you understand people's. That's why I asked the question earlier of Optima is, you know, the behavioral side to me uh, has become a much bigger part of the work that I do in this latter portion of my career, because it really holds the keys to success. And I just found that through experience, it's one of the places that people let their guard down on, where, you know, the work that we're doing is bringing it to the forefront. In manufacturing, the state of manufacturing in the United States, in terms of over the last couple of years, has been a challenge, but you know, very optimistic now that that's on its way back. And you know, we have technologies being placed in the right place that are really designed to maintain the consumer's choice and also give in automotive and give people an opportunity to you know make good livings and then purchase the products that they want to purchase. I mean, automotive has taught me a lot. I consider it, having a degree in automotive components manufacturing because it's sort of a rite of passage. People recognize it's either being in that or being on a school board, but people recognize that if you've gone through that successfully, you have the wherewithal to really take on any challenge. So,
Let's hear from Brad Johnson. Brad's involved also in 3D CAD, I believe, and owns two companies. Brad, I wonder if you could say a little bit more. With two different companies, there's probably two different big ideas going forward, but maybe you could share what's your focus this year, Brad, and the opportunity, maybe the challenge that you have. But first, the big idea, Brad Johnson.
Neomech is a 3D, mostly a service company. We do 3D scanning for companies who don't want to buy their own scanner or don't want to invest in the technology to learn how to reverse engineer and inspect with it. So basically, companies hire us to kind of do more. I want to call them one-off because we have a lot of companies that spend $100,000 with us a year or whatever. But basically, I would consider us a service company. We also do 3D CAD, product development, mechanical engineering, but core focus is 3D scanning and 3D printing. Eris, I started later. Neomech's been around for about 24 years. Uh, and Eris, I started about 12 years ago because I needed the way from the quality perspective. Everybody loved the 3D scanning aspect, but they didn't want to pay an operator to sit there and run this thing all day, pay $100,000 to this guy, and really they would train that person up, and that person would leave and get a better job somewhere else. And so the idea of automation came in, and so I started up a company about 12 years ago to basically do robotic automation of 3D scanning just to kind of replace the human. And that was, took us 5, 6, 7 years to just kind of get it all worked out and tuned in. And then I would say over the past 3 years, we've been deploying systems, not kind of, we have been deploying systems and supporting those customers. And as we get stuff out there in the real world, we find out, oh, could you do this? And can you do this? And so new opportunities come about. I mentioned earlier, just an idea that we had that we haven't really gone anywhere with it. If I had money sitting in the bank, I might invest that money to build systems and then look to lease out those systems or rent out those systems. I get a lot of customers that say, "Oh, I'd love to have your technology, but it's $500,000 or it's $1 million, depending on what the system is. Maybe a cheap. We probably would start at like 250 would be our entry level on a 3D scanner with a robotic arm and software. So there's a lot of people out there that's a big chunk for them to. But they're like, hey, if you could get that for 10,000 a month, I could do all that. I could do that all day long. But that still means I have to come up with, the money to buy that, invest that, and hope that, I get those out there at least. So that's, I guess, something that comes to mind as I listen to everyone talk, a business opportunity. And beyond that would be able to build a system ahead of time to have it ready to go. Because the other thing is, sometimes it will take us maybe up to 6 months to build a system to have it ready to go out and deploy. And, sometimes that's okay with customers, and other times they're like, hey, we need something sooner. But I mean, I guess that's a real quick, 5-minute overview of, kind of where we're at. Neomech, again, back to them, kind of constantly investing in newer technologies. I have thought we're pretty much just based out of Chicago. I can't travel all over the US, but, having other offices, looking at Florida, there's somebody down in Florida. It's kind of our competition. There's a few different, it's a pretty small market, a pretty small world, maybe 5 companies out there that do what Neomech does. There's one in Florida, one in the Northeast, one out West. So there's opportunities for me to advance and grow. So that would, again, if I had money on the table, what would I do with it? Obviously, you're looking to advance and grow your company.
Well, there's money in the room, Brad, and especially with the robotics, you're heading in the right direction. And I
Sure.
can speak firsthand, whether it's to sell or to lease, you must lease because that provides you with recurring revenue. Now, the big catch, of course, is the upfront money that you need for that. But once you get a client that's willing to lease it for X amount of years or months, you could get the money based on that with a collateral. And we've got a manufacturing session upcoming on February 14th. You're certainly welcome to join. But let me open up to see if anybody has a question, comment, thought, feedback for Brad. Anybody?
I would just say, Brad, I'm down here in Dunedin, which is about 30, 40 minutes from Tampa, and I have a tremendous background hosted applications from understanding the depth of the sort of the back end model of these host capital capex based right success based. I had to go those and get up in front of CFOs of Verizon to ask for $20 million, right, and get up there and attest to my internal rate of return. So I understand deeply the battles that you face, both from the back end side as well as the customer side, right? Because historically that came to us in the form of a lease, right? And the lease has a threshold where you have an end to that capacity, and then you have to reset the clock, and you're back, asking for more capital, right? So it'd be pretty interesting. So at the end of the day, what you're talking about is hosted applications, right? And those have to sit somewhere. And we're at a very critical point in the industry. I'm sure everyone here is aware of, the 100% growth that we're anticipating over the course of the next 10 years in the data center space. Why? Right? So, our grand idea is AI, optimized AI workload optimization. So we see that in the future. And I think we've seen the continuum with OpenAI and the like on one side, and DeepSeek coming out and disrupting the, the business model on the other end, right? It's going to, at least I believe, it's going to follow a very similar pattern where, it starts out, some of it in the cloud, some of it in infrastructure, and ultimately it's going to go hybrid. And where does the best workload kind of fit based on your cost optimization, right? So in 2019, I also took some technology with the former president of Verizon Public Sector using the SBI process, using keystroke encryption down in Ring Zero. We brought that technology to Air Force, right? So security is always going to be a key ingredient and recipe to the solutions that we deliver. So I invite anybody here, specifically in the Florida area, I'd welcome the opportunity to meet with you and just get to know you a little bit. It's really AI workload optimization, right? We see that those work. Some of those workloads are going to run on premise. Some of them are going to run in the cloud. Some of them are going to need to talk to each other, right? That skill set is not out there. All of that infrastructure does not exist today. So we're really sort of at the precipice or inflection point of an aspect of a new industry, right? That's what that $500 billion announcement was made for. And we really think that that's just the tip of the iceberg of what's going to happen over the next 10 years. So
yeah, I think every Magnificent Seven are all thinking of putting in hundreds of billions of dollars into that space. So let me open it up. By the way, we do have an AI session upcoming March 5th. You're welcome to join us for that. A little bit more about your big idea. You're focused in the healthcare space with access to care. Ed Connors?
Yes, our big idea. We just came off of a fairly large proposal we made to the Advanced Research Program Agency for Health. And that whole big idea we were packing up is how we can deploy our platform at scale to improve care transitions and eliminate avoidable emergency room cost to the amounts of hundreds of billions of dollars a year. By taking this evidence-based methodology and automating the workflows and increasing the ability to really deploy that at scale across the country. We have recently established a partnership arrangement with a large data company that allows us to ingest a large amount of de-identified emergency department related data. We can look at that data. We can apply our AI machine learning ops models against that to determine where the impact opportunities lie in these various communities. And by applying the AI to that, and we can resolve what are the predominant pain points, what are the opportunities for us to make impact. We can then line up community-based health and social service organizations with those specific communities. So you can imagine that most people are impacted by the same barriers to care, but in each different community, you have different populations of people with different needs, particularly, and the solutions providers for them vary. So we can apply a recommender engine to best match an individual with all of their health and social service needs around it, so that they're in a better, more supported position for care. And that's the big idea. That's what we're advancing in this new administration, and really excited about it.